In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the wheel bearing hub on your Subaru Crosstrek. This one is located in the front of the vehicle, behind the wheel. To remove the wheel, we're going to use a 19mm socket. Make sure you place your lug nuts off to the side, somewhere that you're not going to get kicked around. Now simply remove the wheel. We're going to remove our axle nut using a 32mm socket. We're going to use a hammer and punch to free up the axle from the hub. Make sure that you don't hammer directly on the end of the axle so you don't damage it. Remove the ABS wheel speed sensor using a 10mm. Using a flathead screwdriver, pry out the ABS wheel speed sensor, but be careful not to damage it. The lower strut bolt gets in the way of removing the upper caliper bracket bolt, so we're going to remove it using a 19mm socket and wrench. To remove the caliper and its bracket, we'll remove the nuts holding the caliper bracket to the knuckle using a 17mm. Make sure you support the caliper so that it doesn't drop and hang on the hose. Support the caliper using a hook or a bungee cable. I'll be using a bungee cable. Remove the rotor from the hub. Remove the upper strut bolt using a 19mm socket and wrench. If the upper bolt is difficult to remove, you can use your wrench to wiggle it back and forth. The upper bolt is the camber bolt and should go back in the same place. With the knuckle separated from the strut, we can remove the outer portion of the axle from the knuckle. We're going to remove the bolts holding the hub to the knuckle using a 14mm. Reinstall the strut back onto the knuckle and reinstall the bolts to hold it. That way we don't damage the ball joint. We're going to reinstall the hardware for the hub, just a few turns each. To remove the hub from the knuckle, there's a few different ways you can go about it. One is a hammer and punch on the backside, pushing in on the bolts. Another is if you have an air hammer, you can come in from the edge between the knuckle and the hub. This can really only be done if you're going to replace the backing plate. With the hub starting to separate from the knuckle, you can remove the bolts. With the bolts out, we can pull the hub off. Before you install the new hub, make sure you clean the knuckle of any rust or debris. Apply a small amount of anti-seize to the mating surface and the hub bore. Line the backing plate up on the knuckle and install the hub. Line up the bolt holes and reinstall your 4 bolts. Torque the bolts holding the hub to the knuckle to 70 foot-pounds. Now we'll remove our strut bolts holding the knuckle back up so that we can get our axle back in. We'll line up the holes in the knuckle with the holes in the strut and install our bolts. We're going to install our nuts. And we're going to make sure that we put the washer back on the top one. Now we'll snug these down. Now we'll torque the lower strut bolts to 114 foot-pounds. Before reinstalling your rotor, make sure to clean the hub mating surface. I'm just going to use a little bit of brake clean and a rag since this is a fairly new rotor. If you do have rust or corrosion buildup, you may need to use a wire brush. We're going to apply a small amount of anti-seize to the hub, just on the hub-centric ring in the middle. Reinstall your brake rotor. You can use the lug nut to hold the rotor to the hub. Now we'll reinstall the caliper. Be very careful how you bring the caliper down, as you don't want to twist your brake hose. Reinstall your brake caliper bracket hardware. And snug those down. Torque the caliper bracket bolts to 100 foot-pounds. When installing the ABS wheel speed sensor, you want to use a little anti-seize. Be careful not to get it on the end of the sensor itself, as that may cause it to not work. We're going to snug this up using a 10mm. Be careful not to over-tighten this. We're going to install the axle nut. And snug that down. To torque the axle nut, you can have a friend press on the brake, or you can use a pry bar between the wheel studs. We're going to torque this to 162 foot-pounds. Using a hammer and a punch or a chisel, we're going to indent the nut to keep it from spinning off. Don't forget to remove the lug nut that you used to hold the rotor on, otherwise you won't be able to get the wheel on. Line up the lug studs. If you support the bottom of the wheel and thread one lug nut all the way in, it'll hold the wheel for you. Now we're going to torque the lugs to 89 foot-pounds. You want to torque in a star pattern, keeping all of the lugs even as you bring them down. And that's how to replace your front wheel bearing on a Subaru Crosstrek. Make sure you take the vehicle for a road test and listen for any strange noises or vibrations. Once you've completed this job, make sure you bring your vehicle down to your local alignment shop.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.